Hey you. You. The person right there watching this speech on your computer. I bet your phone is on right now. Is the light in the room on? Is it on even though the screen provides enough light to watch the speech? Is your home have several plugged-in appliances? The typical American household has about 40 appliances routinely plugged in 24 hours a day. The Department of Energy says anywhere from 5 to 10% of your residential electricity is zapped from devices plugged in 24 hours a day. That electricity is made from burning coal. Coal comes from our fair lands, from the rolling hills, the majestic mountain sides, and this magical land where I am right now. Somewhere in the U.S. a Native American is crying a single tear, because we are strip mining their land for coal. Also, you can make a hot pocket for a snack or recharge your phone from the 88 text messages you send a day. At some point, we will run out of coal. According to Tadeusz Pazik, a University of Texas engineering professor, and Greg Croft, a St. Mary's College earth science professor, the Earth reached its peak coal output in 2011 and mining will inevitably decline because easy-to-access coal supplies will now start running out. There is one plentiful source of energy though. There is one light in our dark tunnel of energy despair. Our glorious sun. Solar energy's potential is off the charts. The energy in sunlight striking the Earth for 88 minutes is equivalent of global energy consumption for an entire year. This speech will persuade you to support investment in solar energy. The U.S. should fully invest in solar energy to substantially reduce fossil fuel use. In this speech, I will refute the claims that 1. Solar energy cannot replace fossil fuels, 2. Solar energy pollutes in the manufacturing process, and 3. Solar energy is too expensive. Let's begin by looking at the popular argument that solar energy cannot replace fossil fuels. Critics argue solar energy cannot meet the United States' energy needs. Critics say at 7 p.m. when energy is at peak use, meaning people are making dinner and watching TV and washing their clothes while playing games on the internet in their underwear, solar power will not be able to provide enough energy for our needs. These critics are wrong. According to Ken Zweibel, James Mason, and Vasilis Fthiniskis, in the Scientific American, in 2007, the U.S. needs a bold plan to free itself from fossil fuels. A massive switch to solar power is the logical answer. The U.S. is lucky to be endowed with a solar power resource. At least 250,000 square miles of land in the Southwest are suitable for constructing solar power plants, and that land receives more than 4,500 quadrillion BTU of solar radiation a year. Converting on 2.5% of that radiation into electricity would match the nation's total energy consumption for 1 year. And technology allows us to capture and store solar power, which means when we don't need it, like during non-peak hours, we can collect and store solar energy for when we will need it, like when you are acting a fool using tons of electricity or when it is stormy and no sunlight is available. As Barbara D. Lockwood, manager at Renewable Energy Arizona, testified before the U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Science and Technology in 2008, by incorporating large insulated tanks filled with molten salt, heat captured during the day can be stored and used to produce electricity when the sun is no longer shining. The molten salt and heavily insulated tanks are able to retain heat with high efficiency, and the stored heat can be extracted in the evening or even the following day to create electricity. We can even build new solar power plants quickly to keep up with energy demands. According to Dr. Arnold Leitner, Ph.D. in superconductor physics, solar power plants can be built quickly and can thus follow demand growth more closely than most conventional power projects. Of course, I am a cute little bear, but do not confuse me cute with stupid. Solar energy will not meet all of our fossil fuel needs, but it can meet a substantial amount. According to Dr. Jacobson, a Stanford engineer, in the New York Times published on March 23, 2013, New York alone could supply 20% of its electricity with solar power right now. You might not be ready for solar-powered cars, but your home or apartment complex could convert easily. We don't need to worry about meeting our fossil fuel energy needs because solar power is ready for the challenge. But maybe you are still worried about solar power causing pollution during the manufacturing process. Now I will refute this charge. Some critics fear that manufacturing solar cells might release more hazardous pollution than fossil fuels do. Creating solar or photovoltaic cells requires potentially heavy toxic metals such as lead, mercury, and cadmium. This is true. Making PV cells does emit some pollution. Scientists were concerned with these same toxic emissions. Vasilis Thanakis, an environmental engineer, studied PV toxicity in 2008 and published his findings in the Journal of Environmental Science and Technology. He says when comparing direct emissions from the production of cadmium, the most toxic element of a PV cell, with coal power plants, toxic emissions are up to 300 times lower using PV cells. Ultimately, solar power produces less pollution than burning fossil fuels. Susan Rofe, Ampress and Rajat Gupta, in Sustainable Energy in 2007, write solar technologies have a low pollution impact. There will be some emissions in the manufacturing of solar energy systems, but the energy debt will be paid back within 1 to 3.5 years. What they mean is at most, 3.5 years. Solar cells will prevent more pollution than the initial production of the cell caused. During operation, PV and solar thermal technologies produce no air pollution at all and require no transportable fuels. After the cell is made, there's no additional pollution created by the solar cell. Furthermore, solar cell technology is still developing. This industry can be truly clean and green. The Silicon Valley Toxic Coalition writes in 2009, the solar PV boom is still in its early stages. It can reduce and eventually eliminate the use of toxic materials and develop environmentally sustainable practices. I have discussed the criticism that solar power cannot replace fossil fuels and that solar power causes pollution. I will now discuss the complaint that solar power causes too damn much money. Frugal critics claim solar power is very expensive and changing the US power grid would require infrastructure changes and building expensive cells. These critics are stuck in the 1980s. Solar power is a rapidly developing field. There is a philosophy called Moore's Law. Moore's Law dictates that the number of components on a computer chip doubles every 18 months, which is why your brand new laptop or phone will be out of date in 6 months. Is this same innovation phenomenon true in the solar industry? The National Renewable Energy Laboratory of the Department of Energy believes it is, and they have been watching solar photovoltaic price trends since the 1980s. The price per watt of solar modules was $22 in 1980 and has dropped to $3 today. According to Ramesnam, of the Scientific American, on March 16, 2011, if trends continue, in 2030 solar electricity is likely to cost half, that's right, I said half, what coal electricity does today and continue to get cheaper. Bottom line, solar power is good for the U.S. economy. Solar power is a growth sector. Looking for a job in today's depressed market? You should be studying solar power. According to Daniel McGinn, of Newsweek, for young workers charting a career path, the industry's allure is hard to beat. It's virtually impossible to beat the long-term trends in clean tech. It's a technological growth sector and it would prevent the U.S. from being subject to the whims of foreign energy price demands. Solar power energy independence would insulate the U.S. from the price hikes we see in the gas market. Chris Dudley notes in 2008, solar power does not need to transport or use combustible fuels from divergent regions of the world. It uses a natural, abundant, and free fuel source, the sun. Finally, don't be so cheap. What is the value of your lungs? Okay, for those who smoke, that might be a bad question. But the principle of the question remains. What is the value of your health in our environment? In the long run, land not strip mine for coal is valuable because nature is awesome. In the long run, burning coal en masse causes smog and it sucks to breathe smog. As Dr. Leitner points out, emissions from coal, natural gas, and oil power plants are the main source of air pollutants from power plants in the West. And according to the American Lung Association in 2007, each year air pollution claims 70,000 lives. In the ALA Updated Report 2013 report, 42% of Americans live in an unhealthy air environment. In conclusion, the Earth receives more energy from the Sun in 88 minutes than the entire globe uses in a whole year. This speech argues you should support U.S. investment in solar energy as a fossil fuel replacement. In this speech, I refuted the claims that solar energy cannot replace fossil fuels, that solar energy pollutes during the manufacturing process, and that solar energy is too expensive. We don't have to strip mighty Earth so people can stream movies 24 hours a day while microwaving popcorn and vacuuming the living room. And we don't have to give up the modern comforts of electricity and live like hippies in trees either. Instead, it's time to take advantage of the free, natural, and abundant energy source we have, the sun. It's time to wake up to the potential of solar power.